Uchiha's Rebellion, The Rise of Ruohuo. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 21. I have always had a competitive relationship with the Fugaku clan leader. Orochimaru was silent. He didn't forget what he said before about wanting to correct Ruohuo. But after Ruohuo spoke of his grand dream in the most innocent tone, Orochimaru found that he no longer knew how to speak. Become the leader of the Uchiha clan and protect the stability of Konoha. This sounds normal, and maybe the dream of every Uchiha boy. But, leading the Konoha security department to the ninja world? Establish the laws of the ninja world? Maintain the stability of the ninja world? Kid, you may not know that. Your dream is actually no different from ruling the ninja world. As for the dream of ruling the ninja world, it is probably the shadow of every village that has this thought. And the act of taking Uchiha out of Konoha seems to mean betraying the village? To put it mildly, it might be said that he is leaving the ninja village. But those senior executives don't think so, kid. What interests Orochimaru the most is Wakaka's interpretation of the will of fire. Those who violate the law should be burned to death by the will of fire. So you shouted the will of fire before activating ninjutsu. Is this what you meant? I have to say, your dream is really surprising, Mr. Ruohuo. Orochimaru asked, I'm curious, have you mentioned it to Chief Fugaku? Conquering the ninja world. Is this the child's naive idea, or is it a reflection of the ambition of Fugaku, the young clan leader? Even if the teacher's sight is not clearly perceived. Orochimaru, who has already designated himself as the fourth Hokage, is indeed acting with Hokage thinking. True. Rather than inheriting the teacher's will of fire, he was more interested in inheriting the Hokage and possessing the highest authority in Konoha. But this does not prevent him from becoming a competent actor. No. Wakaka looked at Orochimaru seriously. I have always had a competitive relationship with Chief Fugaku, but his will of fire is much stronger than mine now. I can't expose my ambitions until I'm sure I can defeat him. Orochimaru choked. Such an answer was something he never expected. Well, this answer has some traces. After all, this child was just trying to discuss his own things with Fugaku. Orochimaru decided to change his way of thinking, otherwise he would feel a little unable to keep up with the child's brain circuit. Orochimaru-sensei, can you keep a secret for me? Ruohuo said suddenly. Of course. Orochimaru responded after a brief hesitation, I'm glad that you can tell the teacher about your dream. As a teacher, of course I support your dream and will keep it a secret for you. Wakahuo-kun, I look forward to the day when you become the leader of the Uchiha clan. The child is still young after all. After recognizing the reality, the declaration of dream may also change. As for this child's misunderstanding of the will of fire, Orochimaru thinks it looks good? After all, this will of fire also needs temperature, doesn't it? I feel relieved to hear that the teacher supports my dream. Ruohuo exhaled and said. Orochimaru smiled back. Then please help me, teacher, to submit the application for the Chunin assessment. Orochimaru's smile solidified slightly. Chunin assessment? Yes. By becoming a Chunin, my will of fire will become stronger. Huh? Orochimaru was stunned. What did he hear? Ruohuo looked at his fist and said seriously. I have learned all of Chief Fugaku's fire style, and with Chunin's will of fire, I can challenge Chief Fugaku. Don't worry, teacher, I won't let you down. As long as I can become a Chunin, I have a 20% chance of defeating the Fugaku clan leader. There was silence for a long time. Orochimaru discovered that it was not an easy task to keep up with this child's brain circuit. Let's just talk about the weird setting of will of fire. So what exactly did Omu Chunin teach? Wakeo-kun. Orochimaru felt that it was indeed necessary to correct the misunderstandings in Ruohuo's thinking, otherwise communication might be very troublesome. The will of fire is a spirit and an inheritance, not. I know, Orochimaru-sensei. Ruohuo interrupted in a matter-of-fact manner. The will of fire is the source of power for Konoha ninjas. The stronger the will of fire, the stronger Konoha ninjas can become. Indeed, Orochimaru said patiently, but the strength of the will of fire depends on the heart, cannot be quantified, and has nothing to do with whether you become a Chunin or not. Orochimaru said seductively, look, you just graduated from the ninja school and received a ninja forehead protector. Are there any particularly obvious changes? Of course. Ruohuo increased his volume. Teacher, I have clearly felt the changes. My will of fire has indeed become stronger. Orochimaru had a headache, but... Teacher, look. Ruohuo stated the facts and directly showed two Magatama. After I became a ninja, I obviously felt that the will of fire has improved a lot, and even my eyes have become stronger. Looking at the double Magatama in Ruohuo's eyes, Orochimaru suddenly felt a little less confident. He remembered that Ruohuo was just a single Magatama Sharingan just now, and he was just opening his eyes. Why do you evolve as soon as you put on a forehead protector? Recalling that during Ruohuo's assessment, he used the learned wind escape into fire style, something he hadn't had time to explore yet. Is this kid right? Orochimaru suddenly had this thought in his mind. Could it be that the quantifiable will of fire that Ruohuo believes really exists? Orochimaru narrowed his eyes slightly. So what exactly is this unknown force? Is there any limit to blood inheritance other than Uchiha Sharingan? Or maybe it's Sharingan's special ability? It would be nice if I could study it carefully. An inexplicable impulse quietly grew in Orochimaru's heart. Teacher. Ruohuo, who had not yet noticed that his voice was weaker. If you think I can't defeat the Fugaku clan leader, it's not like I can't challenge him later. But becoming a Chunin is the fastest way for me to obtain the will of fire now, so teacher. The teacher will help you, Ruohuo-kun. Orochimaru suddenly smiled and interrupted, as the teacher said, the teacher will support your dream. Eh? Now it was Ruohuo's turn to be a little confused. How can you be so easy to talk to? Wrong. Teacher, just talk. Can you please stop sticking your tongue out so long? Episode 22. Orochimaru Awakening Progress, 10%. Ruohuo felt like he had opened Pandora's box. And he has proof. Orochimaru took him to the training ground first. Wakahuo-kun, use your Sharingan to observe carefully. Orochimaru formed the seal in slow motion, but it was not fully activated and did not say what kind of technique it was. But the system responded. Ninjutsu type, sea-level wind escape and wind cutter. When the Sun of Flame effect is triggered, you can learn all escape techniques, but all escape techniques activated will be replaced by flames. Successfully learned ninjutsu, fire style Fujirai. An ordinary wind release ninjutsu. If fire knows, Orochimaru is about to start observing his talent of everything is fire style. Anyone who has gone to school knows this. First observe, then study, multiple comparisons, and repeated tests. Take a look, isn't this the most basic process of seeking knowledge as a scientist? Ruohuo will naturally not reject anyone who comes. He doesn't even want to hide the buff that he can learn ninjutsu in seconds. He is the heir to the will of fire, the next leader of the Uchiha clan and the head of the Konoha Security Department, and the future spokesperson of the Ninja World Security Department. If you don't have any talent, how can you make sense? Whoosh whoosh. Instead of being sprayed out of the mouth like other fire styles, several flaming blades appeared out of thin air one after another, with high temperature, slicing the air in front of Aaronkar. Wind release wind cut fire style fire blade. Orochimaru didn't hide himself either. Thoughtfully, he took out his small notebook and quickly took notes. Then he pursed his lips and showed Ruohuo a brand new seal. However, there were a little too many seals this time, and Orochimaru was only displayed and not used. This jutsu may require a little more chakra. If you can't learn it, don't force it. Good teacher. Ruohuo is very positive. Fugaku also said similar words, and finally showed off all the fire style on his body. Orochimaru is a dignified cold lord who studies under Professor Ninjutsu. Even if he doesn't have all 5 escapes at this stage, and there are a lot of snake ninjutsu, it's enough for him to hide for a while, right? Ninjutsu type, B-level water style water dragon bullet. When the Sun of Flame effect is triggered, you can learn all escape techniques, but all escape techniques activated will be replaced by flames. Successfully learned ninjutsu, B-level fire style water dragon bullet. Each of the 20 or so seals was pretty good, and Ruohuo was a little looking forward to it. What will be the effect of using fire style and water style? Ode. The air became extremely hot, and a flaming dragon appeared out of thin air. There is no target to attack, but it is hovering around Ruohuo. The scene is very exciting. It's just that the temperature seems a bit high. Ruohuo is a little bit melancholy, the water dragon bomb has indeed turned into a fire dragon bomb, but it seems that he can't imitate Terumi Mei and fly on the fire dragon. On the other side, Orochimaru's expression became even weirder, and he once again took out his small notebook to record quickly. After recording, Orochimaru was not in a hurry to teach ninjutsu again, but took out a shuriken. Wakahokuin, next I will teach you a very practical ninjutsu. It will be of great help to improve your will of fire. Okay. Ruohuo also wanted to take out a small notebook and record it. Orochimaru awakening progress, 10%. He's starting to fool people, and it feels like he's starting to get closer to the scammer he thought he was. Ninpo Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. Orochimaru shouted this time, and the shuriken he threw split into 2 and 4 in an instant, and soon a shuriken curtain was formed. Same as learning Shadow Clone before. Because it is not an escape technique, the learning buff of Son of Flame cannot be triggered. This time the system did not pop up any prompts. But if fire has Sharingan. This looks like an A-level ninjutsu, right? The learning difficulty shouldn't be too high. After all, Orochimaru learned it just after graduation. Can the learning conditions be seal formation speed? Chakra reserve? Shadow clone technique? Shuriken throwing technique? Oh, you also have to have a shuriken. Ruohuo took out a shuriken from his ninja tool bag, swung it in front of him, and quickly formed seals at the same time. Although he doesn't receive buffs, Ruohuo's talents are not all given by the system. Since Orochimaru could learn it as a child, he should also be able to meet the requirements. Ninpo Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. Whoosh 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 whoosh. A shuriken was shot out and quickly split into countless shurikens in the air, forming a dense shuriken curtain. Ruohuo raised his eyebrows, he was indeed a genius. Oh. Orochimaru pursed his lips and took out a small notebook to quickly record. Ruohuo didn't move at all and obediently had to stand in place, waiting for Orochimaru to take the initiative to give him the wool. And this scene became the epitome of the relationship between the master and the apprentice. It turns out. Whether it is before awakening or after awakening, Orochimaru is a very qualified teacher. The two pillars have grown rapidly under Orochimaru's training. For Wakahui, Orochimaru is indeed the most suitable teacher for him right now. Although he has not yet awakened, Orochimaru's ideal has always been to learn all the arts, find the truth of the world, and obtain eternal life. This goal was born after Orochimaru saw too many deaths. It was only after he failed in the Hokage campaign that he magnified himself infinitely. Even if he did not hesitate to learn forbidden techniques, he had to overcome his fragile life. And now, by chance, Ruohuo, who showed off his talent wantonly, seemed to have opened the shackles of Orochimaru's heart invisibly. It's not much, but it's effective. In the following days, Orochimaru kept demonstrating the ninjutsu within his authority for Wakahui, trying to find the boundaries of Wakahui's ability. And Ruohuo naturally refuses to accept anyone who comes, and frantically increases his ninjutsu reserves. Of course, Orochimaru can't teach every day. As the only Sannin left in Konoha, he was no more leisurely than being a Hokage teacher. But Orochimaru will shadow clone. In addition to basic teaching and ninjutsu teaching, Orochimaru was not absent from every genin mission of Wakahui. This makes Wakahui's ninja life very fulfilling. Get up every day and run 20 kilometers to the Hokage building. Receive today's tasks and try to complete them in the morning. In the afternoon, there is special training for the Chunin assessment, the consolidation and learning of ninjutsu, as well as the teaching of basic ninja abilities. Well, although it is teaching, it is the teacher who takes notes. Get out of class ends in the evening, just in time to catch Obito from school. After training Obito and Shursui, and supplementing their nutrition with grilled fish and game, they went home and fell asleep. Occasionally, Orochimaru would give him a day off, and Wakaki would go to the Konoha security department to learn from his seniors. Especially Genjutsu, it will be of great use in the future. Life goes round and round, efficiently and richly. The days pass. Finally, this morning, Ruohuo got up, looked at the circle marked on the calendar, and smiled confidently. I have been practicing for so long. It's time to level up my will of fire. Some lies, if you keep telling them, you will believe them. Episode 23. Departure, Chunin Assessment. Orochimaru, are you sure you want to do this? In the morning, the sun is shining brightly. Third generation put down the Chunin assessment application in his hand and looked at Orochimaru at the desk. Orochimaru had his long hair tied up today, and was wearing a green vest, a long sword on his back, hand guards, and leggings. As this child's teacher, I think he is ready to become a Chunin, sensei. Orochimaru's answer was spotless. But third generation shook his head and said, now is a special period. You should know what it means to be a Chunin. This kid has a special identity and his unprecedented fire-style talent. Are you sure you want to do this, Orochimaru? The same question takes on a deeper meaning. War, battlefield. In just 2 months, the fire left over from the Second Ninja War was quickly ignited like a prairie fire. After 10 years of recuperation, all countries and villages have restored their military strength. A new round of ninja war has broken out. It is foreseeable that this war will be more brutal, and no ninja village can survive alone. Becoming a Chunin at this time. As this child's teacher, I think this child is ready, teacher. Orochimaru replied with the same words. For Wakahokuin, continuing to perform the Genin mission is a waste of his talent and a loss to Konoha. This evaluation is not low. Especially coming from Orochimaru. Third generation was a little surprised, but soon felt relieved. If Hua can partially learn escape techniques other than fire style, he can release them in the form of fire style. This was no secret among the top brass in Konoha. After all, no matter how high Orochimaru's authority is, it is not enough to teach Wakahuo so many ninjutsu privately. This requires Hokage authorization. God knows how surprised third generation was when they learned that Ruohuo had this ability. Using fire style to activate other escape techniques can still retain certain characteristics. This situation is unprecedented, and once it can be mastered, it may bring about changes in the entire ninja world. Therefore, the third generation project directly approved it at the time and authorized Orochimaru to observe the child's condition to see if this new way of activating ninjutsu could be found. Pity. According to Orochimaru's observation, this child's ability should come from his blood inheritance limit, Sharingan. Because every time this child activates this mutated fire style, it will cause a load on his eyes, making it impossible to maintain Sharingan open for a long time. Orochimaru calls this phenomenon mutated Sharingan, mutated blood inheritance limit. Obviously, this child's situation is unique. Even among the Uchiha clan, this is unheard of. And because of this child has become a popular genius in the Uchiha family. Once something unexpected happens on the battlefield. Let me think about it again. Third generation waved its hand, but still did not agree on the spot. Anyway, he has only graduated from ninja school 2 months ago, so it's still a bit too early. I understand, teacher. Orochimaru raised his 2 fingers, but if possible, please give the teacher a chance. That kid really wants to be a Chunin. As a teacher, I always have to support him. As soon as he finished speaking, Orochimaru's body turned into a white smoke and disappeared. It was a shadow clone. The battle has begun on the front lines. As a disciple of the Hokage, Orochimaru is going to perform an S-class frontline mission this time. Since it is an S-level mission, it goes without saying that it is dangerous. You choose to say this kind of thing at this time, huh? Third generation smiled and shook his head. Orochimaru has always been his proudest and best disciple. It was him who realized Orochimaru's talent and taught him what he is today. Third generation has long had the idea of letting Orochimaru succeed Hokage. If it weren't for personality reasons, maybe. It seems that this child is indeed affecting you, Orochimaru. Third generation looked at the Chunin assessment application form again. In the photo of the candidate above, the young man has a serious face and a pair of big, clear, and determined eyes. Fine. As your teacher, I will always support you, Orochimaru. Snapped. The official seal belonging to the Hokage was stamped on it. Are you going to take the Chunin exam? Konoha Security Department, Fugaku holds the Ruohuo Chunin exam admission ticket. The surprise on his face has not dissipated. Well, Mr. Orochimaru felt that I was ready, so he submitted the Chunin assessment application to me before performing the mission, and Grandpa Hokage passed it. If nothing else happens, I will soon become a Konoha Chunin. Ruohuo replied in an understatement. As he said, it all went very smoothly. Orochimaru supported him in competing for the title of Uchiha clan leader. After 2 months of special training and observation, he helped him submit the application. Third generation really agreed. Of course, I don't agree that Ruohuo also has Plan B, which is nothing more than exercising the power of the clan leader in advance and using Fugaku's official seal. After passing the Chunin assessment, Ruohuo felt that various rewards were already waving towards him. 3 Magatama of the Will of Fire, B-level main skill slot, and B-level family mission rewards. The family rewards are unknown, but based on previous rewards, they shouldn't disappoint. Especially this main skill slot, the improvement of ninjutsu can be said to be completely transformed, even soaring into the sky. Because there is a good teacher. Wakahara currently has 25 C-level ninjutsu in reserve, which is a bit too much. Limited by the characteristics of fire style, most of these ninjutsu have overlapping functions, and only a few of them can really be used as conventional weapons. The main skill slot has a pretest function, so Ruohuo tried it out one by one. Basically, it reduces consumption and increases power. But there is one exception, and that is the fire style that Ruohuo has mastered the longest and was the first to master, Great Fireball. Main Skill 1, C-Level Fire Style Great Fireball. Main Skill Increase, Power 200%, Consumption 50%, Chakra Consumption is minimum 10%. Main Skill Characteristics, Absolute Control. You can control this ninjutsu form in any way except the activation method. Control ninjutsu form at will. There is a saying, according to Ruohuo's experiments, this feature alone is enough to replace most fire styles. Except, of course, mutated fire style. Although he didn't mind showing off his talents in front of Orochimaru, Wakahui wasn't stupid enough to hold anything back. In addition to pretending that it consumes a lot of money and pretending that you can't learn this operation. Wakaka often affects Orochimaru's observation records by reducing its power. The true power of most mutant fire styles far exceeds Orochimaru's evaluation. Plus Genjutsu who studied at Uchiha. Orochimaru's assessment of his strength is at least 70% behind. When traveling in the world, it's always good to keep a guard up. Okay. Fugaku returned the admission ticket to Ruohuo and patted Ruohuo on the shoulder. Come on, Wakahuo-kun, don't put any pressure. You are now the pride of the entire Uchiha, it doesn't matter even if you fail. Safety first. Fugaku meant these words. As a clan leader, he is sincerely concerned for his descendants. Especially this junior, he is still the #1 genius of the Uchiha clan. By the way, you don't seem to have any teammates, Wakahuo-kun? Fugaku finally discovered the problem. Don't worry, clan eldest brother. Ruokahuo stood on tiptoes and patted Fugaku on the shoulder. Fugaku's face darkened. I'm Orochimaru's disciple, and I'm Uchiha's #1 genius. I don't need any teammates or anything like that. If Hua confidently believes. Moreover, Mr. Orochimaru conducted special training for me for the Chunin assessment for 2 months. During this period, I have found a way to pass the level with 100% efficiency. Maybe by this time tomorrow, I will already be a Chunin. Episode 24. Is this how difficult the Chunin test is? Early the next morning. Obito and Wakahara got up early to help Grandma work. When Taeyang clocked into work, Grandma had already prepared rice balls for 3 people. These rice balls are very large, and a normal adult can eat up to 2 of them. Brother, does it take many days to take the Chunin exam? Why do you bring so many rice balls? Obito, who was helping Wakahuo pack, said puzzled. Normally it takes a week. With the subsequent assessment, it may take 10 days. Wakaka thought about Kaido. During this special period, the scale of Konoha's Chunin assessment will be much smaller. There is definitely no joint exam, and those taking the exam are all genin from Konoha. There was only 1 day's rest between the second and third assessments. This was what Orochimaru told him before leaving. It's been so long, that's not right. Obito's eyes widened. Brother, what you brought is definitely not enough, take mine too. No need, Obito. Ruohuo rubbed Obito's spiky head. To be on the safe side, Ruohuo really planned to pass the test at the speed of light. And in order to prevent accidents, such as clearly defeating the opponent, but being judged as not having Chunin strength. Ruohuo was actually preparing to eliminate all his opponents in the second game. If there is no opponent, he can always advance automatically, right? The location of the exam room for the first exam was a bit off. Starting from the Uchiha tribe, We basically crossed the entire Konoha and came to the other side of Konoha. The examination room is a one-story building that looks like an abandoned factory, with a forest at its back and a makeshift sign in front. Chunin Assessment Examination Hall. Not to mention, it really feels like taking the college entrance examination in my previous life. But Ruohuo, who thinks he has been successfully conveyed, certainly does not have any psychological burden. Kakashi was able to pass the test at the age of 6. Itachi even passed the test on his own. With his current strength, he wouldn't be afraid even if these two guys were together. The one looking at the gate is Hyuga. TSK, he's still rolling his eyes. Then plan A won't work, I'm afraid. Perhaps because there was a war on the front line, Ruohuo saw many Hyuga people at the entrance and inside of the examination room. They all rolled their eyes and glanced back and forth in all directions, maybe to prevent spies from getting in? The Chunin assessment is indeed equivalent to the ninja world's version of the college entrance examination in a sense. Now is a special period, so it is normal to be stricter. Fortunately, I didn't choose Hyuga at the start, otherwise I might have had a hard time escaping my life as a security guard. Ruohuo walked into the examination room muttering. He originally wanted to use the transformation technique to disguise himself as Orochimaru. You can go in and find any excuse to send people away, saying that the location of the examination room has changed, or simply announcing that these people have been eliminated. Anyway, with Orochimaru's current status, there are really not many people in Konoha who dare to disobey. It doesn't matter if you're discovered, it's not a violation. But with so many cataracts staring at him, Ruohuo thought it was better to forget it. He had a plan B anyway. Entering the classroom-like examination room, the examiner was not there. Ruohuo took a look around and found that there were quite a lot of people. Most of them are teenagers aged 11 or 12, who are in their youth and considered fresh graduates. There are also uncles who look like they are in their 30s, with watermelon heads, eyebrows, and eyes twice as big. What the hell? Ruohuo's eyes twitched. Isn't this Matt Dai? Why is this guy here too? That's right, as a 10,000-year-old genin with the buff of never giving up, fighting against repeated defeats should be his style. Well, a talent like this may become my loyal partner, Uchiha. Then maybe plan B can be changed. Ruohuo randomly found a seat and sat down, and began to make plans in his mind. Plan B, seize the exit in the second assessment and eliminate all candidates. Matt Dai will definitely resist, and this guy is definitely no match for his genjutsu. After all, Mater Dai doesn't have a lifelong enemy with Sharingan. But the 8 Gates dungeon and various steel fist physical skills on this guy are still very valuable. When he becomes the clan leader, he can popularize this practice in Uchiha. Let the Uchiha tribesmen who lack talents also have a certain fighting ability. Uchiha is so lucky to have a clan leader like me in the future. Ruohuo thought. The examiner never showed up. The candidates gradually lost their control. They were all ninjas from Konoha. Many of them knew each other and whispered to each other. The examination room gradually became noisy. Hey, Uchiha. A young ninja came to Ruohuo and asked, why are you sitting here alone? Where are your teammates? I don't need teammates. Ruohuo replied coolly. The young ninja's expression suddenly became strange. Hey. I thought you were the type who doesn't grow taller. How do you listen to your voice? How old are you? Wakahuo glanced at him and carried out the aloofness of the Uchiha clan to the end. None of your business. You brat. The young ninja was about to have a fit, but suddenly, a burly examiner walked in. Quiet, everyone. The examiner's voice is also very rough, the type that can scare children into tears. The entire examination room suddenly became quiet. The burly examiner scanned the entire audience with his ferocious eyes, and looked at Ruohuo for 2 more seconds, seemingly a little surprised that there were such young candidates. Distribute the test papers now. The assessment time is 10 minutes. The time starts from now on. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire examination room suddenly exclaimed. 10 minutes. It should be a quick answer question, right? Damn it, why is it different from last year? There are also those who seek advice from Matt Dai. Daisang, you have participated in so many assessments, do you have similar experience? Matt Dai scratched his head, sorry, I was basically eliminated in the first game, so. Cut. Ruohuo sat near the front and got the test paper first. The content of the test paper also surprised him. Except for the fields for filling in personal information, this entire test paper is actually a blank paper. Other candidates soon discovered this as well. There are no exam questions. How to write this? Damn it, is this how difficult the Chunin test is? Did the test questions appear in places I ignored? I know, this must be Genjutsu, solution. Huh? I'll solve it again. Looking at the mess of candidates, the examiner finally gave a cruel smile. The moment you step into this examination room, the examination has already begun. The content of this assessment is to test your intelligence gathering abilities. Limited to this examination room, including me, write all the information you can collect, including your name, blood type, ninjutsu you are good at, etc., into the examination paper. Your information is in the hands of the examiner. 1 point will be added for each correct entry, and 1 point will be deducted for each incorrect entry. Only those whose team's total score exceeds 20 points can participate in the next assessment. After the examiner finished explaining the rules, he paused deliberately, looked at his watch, and grinned. Now, you only have 8 minutes left. Episode 25. Why do you give me 0 points? Monkey, why did you change the test questions I gave without authorization? In the Hokage office, Danzo, who was watching the exam scene in the crystal ball with the third generation project, asked. It hasn't changed much, Danzo. Third generation took a puff of cigarette and said calmly. What kind of information is name and blood type? You also lowered the total score by half. Danzo frowned. There is also the penalty item for intelligence exposure, why didn't you include it? This is the Chunin assessment, Danzo. The third generation was also a little displeased. Your standards are too strict and are not friendly to candidates from rich families. This in itself is a risk that rich ninjas have to bear. Danzo argued. Okay, I won't argue with you. Third generation waved his hands. Didn't I also shorten the assessment time? The effect is almost the same. Huh. This kind of assessment is meaningless. I think it's better to just cancel it. Third generation didn't respond and continued to smoke and watch the live broadcast. Danzo stared at third generation coldly for a while, snorted coldly and stopped talking. A minute passed. You didn't delete my rule that allows for on-site torture of intelligence, right? Danzo asked coldly. There's this rule. Now it was third generation's turn to sit still. Why didn't I see it? Ha. Does this need to be written down deliberately? Isn't it normal to torture intelligence under extreme conditions? You have gone too far, Danzo. They are all children of Konoha, and you let them torture their own companions. You are too weak, monkey. This is the world of ninjas, there are no companions, only tasks. I am the Hokage. Danzo. I disagree. Humph. You will regret it sooner or later, monkey. After a fierce confrontation, the two glared at each other for 30 seconds, then sat down again in tacit agreement and continued to look at the crystal ball. Fortunately, in the examination room of the crystal ball, there was no situation where the candidates tortured the candidates. And what makes the third generation project very gratified is that even so, there are still several candidates who have begun to submit papers in advance. These children all understand the importance of intelligence. Not bad, not bad. Third generation took a puff of cigarette happily, as if the unhappiness just now had never happened. Humph. Danzo snorted coldly. The third generation program switches the screen to another examination room. And the situation here is somewhat special. Huh? Ruohuo? Third generation looked at the figure in front of the podium and always had an ominous premonition. Huh? Uchiha? Danzo also stared at that figure, recalling the information about this Uchiha brat in his mind. In the examination room, Ruohuo looked at the examiner with a serious face, and every hair on his small head was screaming dissatisfaction. Why do you give me 0 points? Just because I am the examiner, the burly examiner shouted. You wrote 20 Konoha ninjas on the test paper. What kind of intelligence is this? Why is this not intelligence? Ruohuo also raised his voice. Aren't they Konoha ninjas? Could they be ninjas from other ninja villages? Ruohuo argued, isn't this kind of information important on the battlefield? Don't you need to identify the enemy before taking action? You should give me 20 points. I advise you to go back and rewrite it immediately, otherwise the whole team will be eliminated directly. Ruohuo's voice was loud, but his childish voice sounded inexplicably joyful to the examiner. This little guy. Third generation smiled and shook his head, his face wrinkled like an old chrysanthemum. It seems that Orochimaru is destined to be disappointed. Such an answer obviously cannot pass the first assessment. But that's fine. Although the current war is tense, Konoha is far from needing children to go to the battlefield. There is no harm in letting such a little guy stay in the village for a few more years. However, I think this Uchiha brat is right, monkey. Danzo said suddenly. Huh? Third generation was stunned for a moment, looking at Danzo with doubts, and then gradually became sharper and his expression became serious. He is still a child, Danzo. Third generation said solemnly, you'd better not have any dangerous ideas. Old friends for many years, you know my strengths and weaknesses, and I know your depths. Third generation, who probably knew what Danzo was thinking, immediately warned. And he is Orochimaru's disciple, so it's not your turn to interfere. I'm just discussing things, monkey. Danzo's expression was indifferent, completely different from the grumpy old man before. This brat Uchiha is right. On the battlefield, before launching any action against the enemy, you must at least confirm the identity of the enemy. His answer really deserves points. Danzo narrowed his one eye and said, this is also your negligence, monkey. Under my rules, points will be deducted for candidates whose information is wrong, so even if every candidate writes such an answer, they will not get one more point. You changed my rules without authorization, which caused such loopholes to appear. You must take full responsibility. Danzo's words are well-founded and the logic is very clear. But third generation remained unmoved from beginning to end. He looked at Danzo with sharp eyes, two eyes facing each other, constantly putting pressure on Danzo. I say again, he is still a child and Orochimaru's disciple, Danzo. You'd better not try to trick him. This is a rule. Danzo was also unmoved and retorted, monkey, what are you afraid of? Is it me or Uchiha? You are too weak, monkey. Danzo shook his head. I'm Hokage, Danzo. Third generation shouted loudly. Danzo stood up, you will regret it, monkey. That's it. In the crystal ball, Ruohuo's childish voice appeared again. The two old men in front of and behind the desk were stunned for a moment and looked at each other, only to see that the examiner's expression was full of surprise. Since you know so much, then why did you answer the question like this just now? The examiner immediately reacted as soon as he finished speaking. Did you just see it on the podium? You don't put the roster in place yourself, can you blame me? Ruohuo's nostrils turned upward, you said it yourself, all the information is in the hands of the examiner. If I don't ask you for information, who should I ask for it? The roster is quite complete, including names, blood types, zodiac signs, ninja numbers, and even instructor ninjas. Ha! Not bad, you can even fool me. The examiner sneered and took back Ruohuo's test paper. Congratulations, kid, you passed the test. Ruohuo straightened his forehead protector, ignored it, and walked out coolly. The examiner looked at Ruohuo's back, chuckled, looked at the time, and smiled ferociously at the candidates in the room. There's only 1 minute left, candidates. Episode 26. The evil Uchiha is not worthy of becoming a Chunin. The first assessment was different from what Ruohuo remembered. Think about it, you can't use the same test questions for decades, right? However, the content of the assessment is also similar. For example, you can score points if you master cheating, or to be precise, a method of gathering intelligence. In Ruohuo's view, Naruto's last question about humanity at that time would definitely not appear in a period like this. Joke, the third ninja war, the most dangerous one for Konoha, was beaten to Mount Kikyo at the doorstep. Under such circumstances, when selecting people who can fight, should humanity be given priority? So how should White Fang's death be calculated? White Fang. Ruohuo touched his chin. At this time, it's time for White Fang to go on that mission, right? If there was a chance, he could talk to Fugaku and help White Fang. The system has responded clearly. After completing the S-level mission, it seems that the relationship module can be unlocked, which should support the creation of several vassals. Although I don't know whether I will be given another mission after the S-level mission, SS. SSS. Anyway, if you have a few more helpers, you will definitely not suffer a loss. Well, it should be impossible to ask White Fan to find a widow in Uchiha and marry her into a wife, right? Uchiha Sakumo? Uchiha Kakashi? This name is a bit long. I feel that White Fan would not agree. After all, the Hatake clan is the only one in the world. I don't know if Fugaku has the courage. If it doesn't work, I can only appear in person. Ruohuo thought to himself and walked towards the second examination room. This assessment should be very different from the next ones. Looking at the forest in front of him, Ruohuo felt that he had stabilized. What he didn't know was that in front of the crystal ball, the two old men were already quarreling because of him. This is cheating. Monkey. This evil Uchiha, he doesn't deserve to be a Chunin. But you just said he complied with the rules. That's different. Danzo slammed the table. He has broken the rules now. Cheating is not allowed and he should be disqualified from the assessment. Third generation looked at a loss. This assessment itself is a test of intelligence gathering ability. What on earth are you talking about, Danzo? He dares to cheat in the assessment today, and tomorrow he dares to peek at Konoha's confidential information for Uchiha. This is the bad nature of Uchiha, they are born evil, monkeys. He's still a child, Danzo. Monkey, you disappoint me so much. Have you forgotten the teacher's instructions? How many times do you want me to tell you, he is still a child? Danzo. But he has the evil blood of Uchiha flowing in him. You've gone too far, Danzo. You are too weak, monkey, such a brat is not worthy of becoming a ninja. I am the Hokage. You will regret this. How about the ninja's physical fitness? It's been such a quarrel, but no one has suffered from high blood pressure or heart disease. The two old men glared at each other for a full minute this time, and neither one gave in. The third generation program didn't even pay attention to the results announced by the examiner in the crystal ball. In the examination room where Ruohuo was, except for him, only 2 teams passed the examination. The passing rate is less than half. Among them, Matt Kai wrote more than 30 pieces of information by himself, relying on his years of assessment experience and genin experience. These include several candidates in the same examination room who took the assessment last year but failed, as well as the detailed identity information of the examiner himself. Yes, this examiner was Matt Dai's former teammate. More than 10 years ago, they were students of the same class at ninja school. No matter what, he has passed the first assessment. Third generation sat back down, lit the pipe again, and said in a deep voice, in the next second game, this kid doesn't have any teammates. No teammates? Danzo narrowed his one eye, then why did you approve him to participate in the assessment? After Danzo finished speaking, he was stunned for a moment. I almost forgot, Monkey didn't seem to want this kid to graduate from the beginning? Then they just. It was Orochimaru who came to ask me for help before he went on a mission. He is very optimistic about this child. Third generation took a puff of cigarette, and after calming down, he realized how unnecessary the argument just now was. I have become accustomed to making noise over the years. As soon as Danzo starts, he always gets into the zone. The time is short and there is no time to match this child with teammates. There is no single candidate in this class. Third generation said solemnly, I didn't want the children to be promoted too quickly. This Chunin assessment is just an experience. Third generation has set a flag. Humph. Danzo snorted coldly and did not continue to say anything. A 6-year-old kid who wants to pass the Chunin exam alone. Huh? Danzo narrowed his eyes. The monkey may do some stupid things, but based on his understanding of Orochimaru, that guy is different from his teacher. Does Orochimaru think that this brat really has the ability to pass the Chunin test? If that's the case, what are you thinking about? Third generation suddenly asked. I was thinking about that kid's cheating just now. Danzo said coldly, although he violated the assessment regulations, I have to say that he caught the assessment loopholes twice in a row. Seizing the loophole does not mean breaking the rules, Danzo. Third generation said, still smoking and staring at Danzo. It doesn't matter, what I value is his spy talent. After saying that, without waiting for the third generation to say anything, Danzo shook his head in disgust. It's a pity that it's an Uchiha, otherwise the roots could consider training him. third generation continued to smoke and stared at Danzo for a long time before returning his gaze to the examination room. If Kagami is still alive, Danzo, you will disappoint him. If Kagami were still alive, he would have restrained Uchiha, the monkey. When it came to old friends, the two old men chose to remain silent in a tacit understanding. But Danzo knew. In this round of confrontation, he won. In the crystal ball, Ruohuo and the other remaining candidates stood in front of the second examination room. There was already an extra scroll in his hand. This assessment will end at the same time 7 days later. The only thing you have to do is to collect the 2 scrolls of heaven and earth in the examination room by any means. Then go to the tower and it will be deemed that you have passed the assessment. Attention, if you cannot persist during the assessment, or if you encounter danger, you can open the scroll immediately, but it will be regarded as giving up the assessment. The female examiner described rules similar to those in Ruohuo's memory. It's a pity that she is not wearing fishnets and her figure is not as hot as the future Hongdo. Speaking of which, I haven't seen Xiaohong for a long time. I don't know if this girl misses me. Ruohuo, who silently recorded all the candidates in his mind, thought to himself while eating rice balls. Episode 27. Take off. Pleasant goat, lazy goat, boiling goat, red wolf, grey wolf. Stepping into this primitive and dense forest, listening to the chirping of insects and birds, Ruohuo felt much better. All of a sudden, I thought of several old childhood friends. They don't live in the forest, but live on the green grassland. It is said that they have lived for hundreds of years. It is normal for 100-year-old sheep to become sperm. They all have unparalleled wisdom, and Ruohuo also learned a lot about life from them. For example, the scheming sheep's art of controlling sheep. Another example is the research and development spirit of the macho big wolf. Or maybe it's the management policy of squad leader Nguyen Yang. As you grow older, you may feel naive when you look back. But these principles of life do affect Ruohuo's growth. We are so lucky to meet this Uchiha kid. 3 ninjas jumped out of the grass, and one of them was the young man who came to make trouble before the exam. The 3 of them were all civilian ninjas, but they obviously didn't have Minato's talent. Seeing the lonely Ruohuo, everyone's faces were filled with excited smiles, as if Chunin's little vest was already waving to them. Kid, don't say that your brothers are bullying you, please hand over the scroll immediately. Otherwise, don't blame your brothers for beating you. Ruohuo didn't say anything, just raised his 2 fingers. Several young people were stunned at first. Couldn't they bear the signs of opposition between primary school students before the battle? Kid, didn't your parents tell you? This is the Chunin assessment, a battlefield. No one will cooperate with you in doing what you do in the ninja school. Not everyone is as tolerant as Orochimaru. Several young people rolled up their sleeves and prepared to teach this younger generation a lesson. TSK. In front of the crystal ball, third generation shook his head. These kids are too eager for quick success. Although it is an assessment, Xiao Ruohuo is also one of their juniors. When they encounter a junior who is alone, it is enough not to help them, but when they come up, they will plunder the scrolls. Danzo glanced at the third generation. Rarely, he did not refute, but stared at the small figure. You know, before I graduated, I was the monitor of the first-year class at ninja school. Ruohuo still has the seal of opposition, but his chakra is ready. Squad leader? Several young people were amused. This kid, why didn't he encounter such a good thing in the assessment in previous years? I was still a student on duty back then. Several people immediately rushed towards Ruohuo. But at this moment, a sudden change occurred. Fire-style Great Fireball. Ode. High-temperature flames spurted out from Ruohuo's mouth, but they sprayed in 2 directions, converging into 2 fireballs, one on the left and one on the right, and then turned into the form of 2 fire fists. This is not over yet. The fire fist spread out immediately and turned into a giant flame palm. Before the 3 genin could react, they saw that the giant flame palm was already slamming towards them. Spread out. The squad leader yelled and hurriedly dodged, but his 2 teammates failed to react. The giant flaming palm enveloped the 2 of them, swatting them like flies. Boom. The screams of the 2 people disappeared as quickly as they came. By the time the giant flame palm disappeared, the 2 of them were charred black and had lost consciousness. Don't you know that only those with a strong will of fire are qualified to become squad leaders? If you don't have enough will of fire, how can you protect the students in the class? Ruohuo looked contemptuous. I really don't know how you got the qualifications. Grandpa Hokage is indeed old and as soft-hearted as my grandma. Do you think Qingqing grassland is so easy to mix up? How could Nguyen Yanjiang be the squad leader if he wasn't born with supernatural powers and was so powerful that he was unrivaled in the world? How to manage other sheep? In front of the crystal ball, third generation had a cigarette stuck in his throat, unable to move up or down. He has completely mastered the form changes of the fire chakra, and has also streamlined the ninjutsu seal, and even has the power to control its power. Danzo's face was expressionless and his one eye was cold. It seems that Orochimaru has developed his abilities well. Danzo clenched his fists where the third generation could not see him. Careless. During this period of time, he has been busy clearing out the enemy village spies in the village, but he has neglected the growth of this genius Uchiha. That Orochimaru guy really doesn't do useless things. Now it seems that this Uchiha kid does have the ability to become a Chunin on his own. Chunin Uchiha, who is less than 7 years old, still has such talent. Danzo restrained himself from looking at the third generation project, quickly weighing a choice in his mind. Can this genius of Uchiha be kept? What will he grow into? After going through that very special stage for Uchiha, will he become the second Uchiha Madara? If he leads Uchiha to launch a riot, will Konoha be able to withstand the losses? What if he is uniting with other ninja villages? Danzo, don't think too much. Third generation was keenly aware of Danzo's strangeness and warned him lightly. Danzo didn't respond this time. In the crystal ball. Does the scroll belong to you? Hand it over, or you can choose to eliminate yourself. Anyway, the scroll will be mine. Ruohuo still had his fingers raised. At this distance, he had at least 15 fire styles that could snipe the last enemy. You don't even need to tie the seal. Family reward, Little Vulcan. You can learn any escape technique, but it will be replaced by flames. And the power is 100%, the activation speed is 200%, and the consumption is 80%, the lower limit of consumption is 10%. You gain 90% immunity to high temperature. After accumulating so many ninjutsu, Son of Fire has been upgraded. The attributes of Little Vulcan include an additional activation speed, which means the seals are simplified. Combined with the main skill slot, various buffs can be filled up directly. The saving throw is directly maxed out. 1/10 of chakra can use 300% of its power. It can also change forms freely, and the key can be released instantly. Ruohuo has now officially renamed the Great Fireball, Fire God's Hand, which can blast the hammer at medium and short range. The most important thing is that Little Vulcan also gives a high temperature immunity buff. Except for other people's fire style. Grandma no longer has to worry that he will be burned to death by her fire style. Damn. Uchiha brat, don't underestimate me. I don't know where the obsession came from. This young ninja turned pale with fright, but he still took out his kunai and bravely rushed towards Ruohuo. But the next second, chant. Another high-temperature fireball swept over, and the young ninja was about to get out of the way, but found that his body could no longer move. Genjutsu. The young ninja finally reacted, but it was too late. Boom. If the fire knocks people out with a knife, there will be no fireballs, it's just Sharingan Genjutsu. Courage is commendable, but the will of fire is a bit weak. Go back and practice for a few more years. You are not worthy of the Chunin level will of fire now. Ruohuo was so cool that he declared the winner first. Clicking off the crystal without GG appears is like walking in brocade at night. Then he searched the young man's body, and in addition to some ninja tools, he also got a scroll of earth. In this shortened Chunin assessment, the second game only had heaven and earth scrolls, but no people. And what he got in his hand happened to be the scroll of heaven. It seems like we can save a meal group. Ruohuo raised his eyebrows, made symbolic seals with his hands, and chanted. A fire dragon appeared out of thin air. The fire dragon crawled at Ruohuo's feet. Ruohuo took off his shoes, rolled up his trouser legs, and then stepped up like a king of fire. I want Wakaka to rank all the ninjutsu I have learned in the past 2 months. Then this fire, water, dragon bullet must be the number one in Ruohuo's heart. Let's not talk about power or anything. At least this technique can make Ruohuo take off. It's a pity that clothes and shoes are not immune to high temperatures. Ruohuo rode the fire dragon into the sky and flew towards the central tower. Wherever it passed, little sparks were left behind, falling into the forest, and soon wisps of black smoke rose up. Ruohuo glanced condescendingly. Generally speaking, the entire forest of death is relatively quiet. Everyone is very cautious. Only small-scale battles broke out in some places. Then let's end this boring assessment. Ruohuo raised his fingers again. Plan B, Forced Promotion Plan, start. Episode 28. Crazy Bombing. Personal Skills, 48. Main Skill 1, See Fire Style Great Fireball Technique. Click to view the main skill characteristics. Fire Style Ninjutsu, Fire Style Dragon Flame Singing Jutsu, Fire Style Dragon Flame Jutsu, Fire Style Great Fire Extinguishing, click to view. Water Style Ninjutsu, released with Fire Style Water Style Fire Bullet Jutsu, Water Style Fire Prison Jutsu, Water Style Fire Dragon Bullet Jutsu, click to view. Earth Style Ninjutsu, released in Fire Style Earth Style Fire Land Return, Earth Style Yellow Springs Ninjutsu, Earth Style Fire Dragon Bullet Jutsu, click to view. Lightning Style Ninjutsu, released in Fire Style. Looking at the virtual interface in front of him, Ruohuo began to choose the skills to clear the field next. Setting fire to a mountain is definitely immoral, and it is even illegal. It will be condemned by conscience and morality, and it will lead to entering a dark room. Third-generation people cannot go to college or take the high-speed rail. But this is the ninja world. The seniors just said this is the Chunin examination, and the examination room is like a battlefield. The battlefield is a matter of life and death, and safety comes first in exams. From the perspective of emergency avoidance. What's the coolest way to burn it? Ruohuo swept over each skill one by one. Because of the characteristics of Little Fire God, all escape techniques have become fire style, and there are bound to be many overlapping functions of ninjutsu. For example, the difference between the range of Wind Escape and Fire Style, Wind Escape Great Breakthrough, and Fire Style Great Fire Extinguishing is the amount of chakra. But Mutation Ninjutsu also has advantages of Mutation Ninjutsu. Using Fire Style to activate other escape techniques can retain certain characteristics. This is a hidden entry. For example, the cutting properties of Wind Style, the explosive speed of Lightning Style, the controllability of Water Style, and the ninjutsu concentration of Earth Style. Although not too much is retained, at most it is an extra layer of buff. But activating other ninjutsu with Fire Style does have the feeling of combining ninjutsu, even the blood successor limit. And the higher the ninjutsu level, the better the effect. For example, the technique Ruohuo chose now. From the second generation project, the scroll was handed over to him through Orochimaru. He pretended not to learn it at the time, but now he uses it, which is regarded as drawing an open card from a dozen whole cards. Ruohuo raised his fingers, raised his head to the sky, and spit out a ball of high-concentration flames. Fire Style Heavenly Cry. The high-temperature flame ball came into the air and then quickly split into tiny sparks, which hit the ground with scorching heat, like streaks of fire raining down. Fire rained down on the forest. The weather is dry, and even a little spark may cause a fire. But now, the sky is filled with fire and rain. This is the benefit of studying under Orochimaru. From Orochimaru to third generation, from third generation to second generation. This is the inheritance of ninjutsu, and it is the alternation of the will of fire. Bursts of black smoke soon rose, and within the scope of the fire rain, trees began to burst into flames. The resin and flames blended perfectly. In a moment, a sea of fire rose around the tower. The range is still not enough. If the 2 fingers of fire have not fallen, chakra continues to mobilize. Fire Style, it's not like it doesn't have high range, wide area techniques. Like Uchiha Madara, who destroyed the Ninja Alliance with a single hand of fire. This is the representative masterpiece of Fire Style AoE. But that requires more chakra. With the consumption reduction and power increase of Little Fire God, if Ruohuo only activates Fire Style, he can also make a guest appearance as a Senju clan member. But that's too arrogant. And without Susanna on, I always feel that the flavor is missing. It's better to keep a low profile for now. Fire Style Fire Dragon Bullet Technique. Ode. A flaming dragon head condenses in the air, With only the dragon head but no body, it is a mutated version of Earth-style Earth Dragon Bullet in the Dragon Character Series ninjutsu. This is also a technical problem that Ruohuo has not yet been able to overcome. Water Dragon Bullet, Fire Dragon Bullet, and Earth Dragon Bullet can theoretically be integrated. After all, they are all fire style now. According to Ruohuo's idea, the ideal form of these three techniques should be taking off with Water Dragon Bombs and using Earth Dragon Bombs to launch Fire Dragons, which can simulate the H20. But his current chakra control is not yet in place, and the bonus of the double Magatama is still not enough. After obtaining Chunin's Will of Fire, you can try it. Now, I can only make do use the howitzer first and play with the parabola. Well, I'm at the origin, and the current fire range is about 100 meters? So if you want to achieve the effect, you have to shoot at least 120 meters? Ruohuo gave a thumbs up and blinked back and forth to measure the distance. 100 at 0 y, considering the gravity factor, then the central axis should be moved forward and set at 60 y2. The height of my tower is about 10 m, so this angle. The former head teacher of the 3rd grade of junior high school seemed to appear before his eyes. Taking his triangle, he drew a function graph on the blackboard. After estimation, the conventional range of combined fire, earth, dragon bullets is up to 20 m. If the fire gets the cannonball and wants to reach the designated position through the inertial parabola in the second half, it is basically impossible. But there are always more solutions than difficulties. Ruohuo soon thought that he could use a second shot to accurately hit the first shell and provide it with additional kinetic energy. This increases the upper limit of launch height and lengthens the parabolic distance. The difficulty is not too high. With Sharingan ranging, it is no different from shuriken throwing. But considering that this process may not be domineering enough, it's better to learn from Big Wolf and be a pragmatic person. Ruohuo then removed the fire, earth, dragon bullet and summoned the fire, water, dragon bullet. Ruohuo stepped on the dragon's head again and flew into the sky. Fire-style dragon flame technique. Ode. Ruohuo first flew around the tower, holding his shoes in one hand, and used high-temperature flames to create an absolutely high-temperature zone. This shouldn't be considered arrogant, right? After all, I'm just afraid that others will pass the level secretly. Ruohuo raised his eyebrows, controlled the fire dragon to fly forward, flew over the fire zone, and then sprayed fire style wildly below. After 2 minutes of Ruohuo's efforts, the fire became much stronger. There were also unlucky people who tried to block people in the tower from the beginning, but before they even got there, they found that the tower was surrounded by flames. I wanted to retreat, but found that the sky behind me was filled with fire. There were also water-style ninjas among these unlucky ones, but after seeing the sea of fire that was like a natural disaster, they still opened the scroll decisively. Among them is Matt Day's team. This guy is definitely poisonous. Ruohuo noticed the eliminated Matt Dai and hated the iron. He was ready to let Matt Dai pass the level, so how could he still be eliminated? As expected of 10,000 years genin, he couldn't help him even if he wanted to. But it seems that this is not the way to go. Ruohuo was flying in the air and frowned gradually as he watched the guys retreating to the edge of the forest one by one. You can't just look for them one by one, right? So he set his sights on the tower again. As long as I meet the customs clearance conditions and directly destroy this place again. That should be enough, right? Ruohuo thought so. He did the same. Then, as ninjas rushed into the examination room one after another water-style ninjutsu rushed towards the fire. This Chunin assessment was urgently stopped. Episode 29. Konoha is my battlefield. There is a fire in the southwest that is about to spread. The second team will be on top first and use wind release to blow it back to me first. Northeast. The fifth team has used Earth style to create an isolation zone, put out the fire as soon as possible. Captain. There is the last team hiding underwater in the middle of the forest river. Nanny. The rescue team is on standby. The rest of the people are following me. Damn it. Did the ninja from the enemy village sneak in? Everyone, please work harder to protect our forest. Konoha, which has the highest vegetation coverage rate in the ninja world, has its own emergency fire squad. Mainly composed of water-style ninjas, supplemented by wind-release ninjas and earth-style ninjas, it is equipped with a medical team and an emergency search and rescue team. It is worth mentioning that there are also traces of Hyuga in the fire squad. Although ninjutsu is not used, the Byakugan of the Hyuga clan can very well detect the location of trapped persons, and the advanced gentle fist Kaiten can also deal with some emergency situations. These were things Ruohuo didn't know before. So when third generation was introducing this knowledge to him, he listened very carefully. I understand, Grandpa Hokage. The Konoha Fire Department, like the Konoha Security Department, is a very reliable department. They are all worth learning from. Official Ruohuo said seriously. No one in the fire squad would have thought that this fire that could ignite the entire Konoha accidentally came from the little boy in Hokage's office. Real little boy. Third generation glanced at the pipe on the table, and now he really wanted to take a long drag. Xiao Ruohuo, can you tell Grandpa why you want to create a fire? Third generation still restrained his craving for cigarettes. He valued the education of the little guy in front of him more than this momentary relief. When a child masters extraordinary power, if he is not taught properly, a disaster like today will definitely not be the last time. Fire? What fire? Ruohuo widened his confused eyes. Grandpa Hokage, what are you talking about? Looking at those clear and innocent eyes, third generation hesitated for a moment and pointed to the thick black smoke in the distance outside the window. During the exam, you used fire style to burn down a large forest. The firefighting class and the Jonin Chunin class were basically dispatched, but the fire has not been put out yet. Xiao Ruohuo, your behavior is very dangerous. Somehow, Danzo's previous words came back to the third generation's mind. He dares to cheat today, and tomorrow he dares to steal Konoha secrets. Today this little guy dares to set fire to the mountain. If he doesn't educate him well, then in the future. Third generation misses his disciples a little bit. At least when Orochimaru was in the village, the kid had always been normal. But those two seniors told me that the examination room is the battlefield. Ruohuo looked serious. Grandpa Hokage, did I overestimate them? But I have left them room to escape. Third generation was choked. Room to escape. If I hadn't stopped the assessment in time and asked the rescue team to quickly go to support, the fire would have reached my office now. You call this an escape space? Where to escape? Back to Konoha. And the most depressing thing for third generation is, this little guy really wasn't lying. He could also clearly see Ruohuo's performance in the examination room. If it is really about destruction, then based on Orochimaru's assessment of Wakahui's strength, this little guy will definitely be able to do even more outrageous things. But why did you destroy the assessment endpoint again? Third generation said, rubbing his eyebrows. Because I don't want them to advance. Ruohuo said matter-of-factly, although it's not a real battlefield, I can't let my opponents live too comfortably. They are all my seniors, and I can't really hurt them, so I can only eliminate them. Is there something wrong? Nothing wrong. We can't kill all the candidates, right? The third generation was stunned for a moment, and looked into those big clear eyes. In a daze, he seemed to see Danzo in his youth. At that time, Danzo still had a pair of clear and bright eyes, and he was very serious and unsmiling. He would always say dangerous things seriously and take action. Third generation even has a ridiculous idea in mind right now. Wakahuo seems to be quite similar to Danzo? Third generation took a deep breath. Calm down, this little guy is actually not wrong at all. Even if the examination room is not a battlefield, the candidates must be opponents. Ruohuo's behavior seems excessive, it is indeed excessive, but his starting point is not wrong. On the contrary, if this was really on the battlefield, no one in the village would criticize Ruohuo's actions except the timid enemies. This little guy seems to be quite suitable for the battlefield. It's a pity that Ruohuo can't hear it. Otherwise, he would definitely give third generation a thumbs up and then announce on the spot. That's right, I was born to be a battlefield, and I have regarded Konoha as a battlefield. Call. After thinking about it, third generation finally let out a sigh of relief. This child's thoughts are special. It's not dangerous, but it's too upright. This is not a bad thing. After all, he is still young, and with the guidance of his teachers and family, he can always take the right path. But the key is that this child has extraordinary abilities and amazing talents. He has already mastered powerful power at a young age. There are also special blood inheritance limits. This gives me a headache. But it's okay. He also has a group of old guys who can discuss how to deal with it next. He also has an excellent disciple who can restrain this little guy. As for Konoha's loss this time, that kid Fugaku should be able to understand, right? You go back first, Shao Ruohuo. Third generation was exhausted and waved his hands. Have a good rest. Next. Third generation paused. Although the Chunin assessment was suspended, according to the rules. This kid seems to have no opponent in the third assessment? Grandpa Hokage, when can I wear Chunin's vest? I have already promised my grandma. Ruohuo will definitely not give third generation a chance to be careless. He is also waiting to open the 3 Magatama and quickly study his dragon's roar technique. Step on the fire dragon and blast the enemy wildly. It's exciting just thinking about it. By the way, when can I find a way to get this wood style? He is an Uchiha, so it seems hard to bring this up, right? How about, please Orochimaru? But if you can ask Orochimaru, then those other forbidden arts, such as flying thunder god and so on, seem to be very delicious too. I still need to discuss this with the other elders, Shao Ruohuo. The third generation project did not give a clear answer in the end. Just go back first and wait for the notification. If the fire waits for a week. This week, he frequently went to Konoha's security department to ask for advice on genjutsu. But Fugaku rarely appeared. He only saw Fugaku a few times, and found that he suddenly became very tired, his whole person had no energy, he was very haggard, and he felt that his body was hollowed out. And I often hesitate to speak, not knowing exactly what happened. Until a week later. Ruohuo received the notice to participate in the third assessment. And on this day, Orochimaru is back too. Episode 30. Water-style ninja Ruohuo. Konoha Cemetery. The third ninja war has just broken out, and the list of heroes in Konoha has grown a lot. Among them are all of Orochimaru's subordinates who performed the mission this time. A total of 6 people were killed in action. Although this S-class mission was successfully completed, the price was also very heavy. Orochimaru is back. But he was the only one who came back. Life is fragile, Lord Ruohuo. In front of the tombstone, Orochimaru whispered. Those who came to mourn were not only Orochimaru and his master and apprentice, but also the third generation and relatives and friends of the victims. The atmosphere is a bit sad. But Wakahara has reason to suspect that Orochimaru came to mourn this time just to show off in front of the third generation. I can feel their will of fire, sensei. After all, he is Orochimaru's disciple, and Wakahuo is also very knowledgeable in this aspect. They sacrificed themselves for the future of Konoha. I will take the fire will of my seniors and become a qualified Chunin. Orochimaru smiled and put his hand on Ruohuo's shoulder. The reason why I didn't touch my head is because Ruohuo will 100% hide. At noon, Chunin takes the final assessment. There is a shady secret in any assessment, and the Chunin assessment is no exception. Looking at the familiar faces and remembering the funeral in the morning, Ruohuo suddenly understood the third generation project a little bit. The fighting on the front line became increasingly tense. Although Konoha's war reserves are still sufficient at this stage, they have to be considered for the near future. Some of these genin candidates do have Chunin abilities. Although it should be eliminated according to the rules, the makers of this rule obviously need more Chunin to appear. So how did Matt Dai offend third generation? Ruohuo complained after scanning around, but couldn't see Matt Dai's figure. Being able to defeat the 7 ninja swordsmen into the 3 lucky treasures in the future, does he really not even have the qualifications to be a Chunin without opening the 8 gates? Let him be. First match. Uchiha, yes, Fuga Ayakawa. Candidates are in place. When Ruohuo walked into the examination room, his opponent was a 12 or 13-year-old Hyuga tribesman. There is no name for this guy in the original work, so he is probably just a miscellaneous fish. But having come to this point, in order to ensure that Chunin's qualifications were foolproof, Ruohuo decided to let some water go. Show more of your combat IQ and the will of Konoha's fire to reassure the third generation. If fire forms the seal of opposition. Hyuga Qingchuan also formed the seal of opposition, and his tone was so cold that he said cruel words. I have finally waited for this moment. Although the patriarch has repeatedly ordered me not to have a private fight with you, this is the Chunin assessment after all. So no matter what I do next, the patriarch will not care about me, Uchiha Ruohuo. Ruohuo frowned, are you serious? Could it be that the fire in the forest of death also inspired your Hyuga fire will? Do you have to fight to the death with Uchiha? However, Wakahara soon understood the reason for Hyuga Ayakawa's hostility. My poor brother still can't get out of bed. As a brother, he can't do anything. You can't understand how I feel. Ruohuo shrugged. Actually, you can spend more time with him. Start, the examiner ordered, ending the harsh talk session, and then withdrew from the fighting area. Byakugan. Hyuga Qingchuan immediately entered the fighting state, with dense veins around his eyes, and attacked Wakahuo with all his strength. Ruohuo was not careless. He knew that this assessment was all artificially controlled, including the results and the opponents. In other words, Hyuga Ayakawa was specially assigned to him by the third generation project. Twice the age difference, but also has a strong bloodline limit and a powerful gentle fist. From where Ruohuo looks, this guy should be able to take a beating. Fire style great fireball technique. Fire God's fist. If the fire spurts out flames, turns into a fist, and hits Hyuga Qingchuan. This kid's fire style has become stronger again. Fugaku, who was intertwined with his wife in the stands, praised. Fugaku had never seen the great fireball change its form like this before. But it suits Wakahokuin's age, hubby. Mikoto, who was already pregnant, said with a gentle smile, don't you think this technique is cute? Haha. Fugaku smiled, is it cute? His opponent won't think so. On a high platform in the distance, third generation also made similar comments. He's still a child after all, but his ability to control ninjutsu's form is really amazing. He's truly a genius. Wakaokuin's talent in fire-style ninjutsu may be beyond our knowledge, sensei. Orochimaru, standing behind the third generation, said in a hoarse voice, after discovering his special ability, I have repeatedly overestimated his talent. But it turns out that the current Ruohuo Jun is still far from fully developing his talents. Looking at the teacher's thoughtful expression out of the corner of his eye, Orochimaru smiled softly. He is not the only one who underestimates Lord Ruohuo's talent, isn't it even the teacher? Otherwise, we wouldn't have tried to let this child of the Hyuga clan use Gentle Fist to defeat Wakahara-kun. It is true that under the age limit, physical skills and chakra capacity may be Ruohuo's only shortcomings now. But how can age cover the child's blazing light, which is as hot as a blazing flame? Boom! The flaming giant fist hit the ground, and Hyuga Qingchuan had already retreated to the edge of the examination room. This should be the limit distance of your technique, right? Hyuga Qingchuan has a solemn expression and cannot get close to Uchiha Ruohuo, and his strength will not be fully utilized to the greatest extent. But Hyuga Qingchuan obviously thought too much. As long as my actions are reasonable, it should be fine, right? Ruohuo raised his eyebrows. Although the final assessment is an elimination system, winning or losing is not the key to determining whether one can become a Chunin. But winning is definitely better than losing, but you have to win with distinction and glory. Then let's start the show. Ruohuo raised his two fingers, fire-style fire, earth, dragon bullet technique. A flaming dragon head condensed on the side of Wakahui, opened its bloody mouth, and then sprayed a firebomb towards Hyuga Qingchuan. Chug tug tug tug. Not good. Hyuga Qingchuan's expression condensed, he took a deep breath, and put his hands on the chakra. Gentle fist. 8 trigrams palms. Bang 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 bang. The first batch of firebombs were chopped down by Hyuga Qingchuan one after another. But this is not over yet, the second batch of attacks has been put in place, and this time it is more intensive, with twice the number as before. 8 trigrams 16 palms. Hyuga Qingchuan's movements are standard, his chakra is smooth, and he chops again with gentle fist. This Hyuga has already lost. Fugaku shook his head in the stands. Although I don't know why Ruakawa was so cautious this time, in Fugaku's eyes, Hyuga Ayakawa had already lost the moment he was forced back by the great fireball at the beginning. Of course, even if Hyuga Ayakawa can get close, Fugaku doesn't think Wakaka will lose. This guy's fire style has such a temperature that the Uchiha clan has to pay nearly 1 million ryo in compensation. How can it be something that only Hyuga can withstand? 8 trigrams 32 palms. Bang 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 bang. Hyuga Qingchuan is still waving his palms, and this time he hits exactly 32 fireballs. Huh. Huga Qingchuan breathed heavily. The gentle fist method is supposed to hit the enemy's acupoints so that the enemy cannot use chakra. He has not yet mastered the more powerful 64 palms, and 32 palms is the limit. But Uchiha Wakuhu's chakra should be almost used up, right? Huga Qingchuan frowned. Where are the people? Why is there no one in the entire examination room except the examiner and a pair of shoes? Behind you. Huga Qingchuan was shocked and turned around suddenly, only to find that there was only a wall behind him. Looking back, he found that the examiner was raising his head with a shocked expression, and there was a silence in the audience. What happened? Huga Qingchuan raised his head, his expression gradually dull. It was a fire dragon burning with blazing flames, hovering in the air, so dazzling and hot. The huge dragon head stared at him coldly. Just looking at it made people palpitate. And on top of the fire dragon's head, the barefoot young man raised his fingers with an expression of disdain on his face. Well. Ruohuo stepped on the fire dragon and looked helplessly at the third generation in the distance. Who said I only know fire style? I'm so frustrated. Is it time to give that Chunin vest to me?